the Bigfoot. So your encounter really, in simple terms, messed you up pretty badly.
Oh yeah.
Did he?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that. Did he hurt you in any way, or is it just you seeing him?
No. I was on in Marianna. If you know where Marianna, Florida is, Connor lives there. But there's a couple of main roads that run through Marianna. Highway 90 runs right through the heart of Marianna. It splits the north from the south side. On the west end of Highway 90, there's a small highway that goes from 90 up to Highway 231, which is a big highway. And halfway down that stretch of 73, we had a contract on some land on the east side of 73, about halfway down. And I went out to check hog traps one night. I had 5 traps out there, 3 different tree stands. We had tripod stands. Back then I had a group, we called ourselves Grunner Hunters. And we would go to farms, get contracts with them to come in there and eradicate the nuisance hogs that were destroying the crops. And we, it was a blast, a lot of fun, but it was absolutely a full-time thing. We had to stay on it. And well, I couldn't get anybody to go with me. It'd been about 3 days and I really needed to check the traps. 2 of them, I tied the doors up. We used the door that's, it's a swing gate door to where the pigs can keep coming into it. You get 1 pig in it, and for days they'll just keep piling in it. And sometimes we'd have as many as 35 in a trap. Wow. And you have to check them. They require a lot of water. If you don't have water in an area, chances are you don't have any pigs either. They require a lot of water. Their body temperature, just laying at rest in the shade, is a little over 102 degrees. And so they'll overheat real easily. Well, the traps haven't been checked in 3 days. 2 of them had the doors tied up so they couldn't close. But the main trap, the one that was in the hardest hit area, that one was set. Well, I went out. I couldn't find anybody to go with me because it was during the week, and I was the only one that was not working. I was forced into an early retirement. And so I called a friend of mine, my ex-girlfriend, and I asked her if she would ride out there with me. It was about 8:45 or 9 o'clock at night. And I told her, I said, you can sit in the car in the AC. I'll leave the car running, and I'll get out and I'll run, check the trap, come back, and we'll leave. I just don't want to go by myself. And I had this overwhelming sensation not to go, but I had to. It had been 3 days and the trap needed to be checked. Well, she finally agreed, and we get there. And the way that property's set up, there's a large field that runs from 73 toward the east. And then there's 2 smaller fields that are north of that field and kind of sort of between that field and 73, but you can't see those 2 from the highway. And it was the big field, the main field. That one you can, when you walk out onto the field, you can see cars, the headlights as they pass there. I think it's 1,200 acres. I don't remember exactly. It's a big field. Well, to get to it, you pull into the small field, which is around 18 or 20 acres. And you got to drive to the opposite side. You come in from the highway and you have to drive all the way across it. There's a little trail that goes around the outside of the field. And then that field is surrounded by very thick vegetation, just incredibly thick. The foliage, none of us have went into it because you can't get through it. There's a wall on the outside edge, and it's muscadines. There's kudzu. It's all kind of really thick foliage, and it forms a barrier where there's a 2 trail that goes from that little field to the big field. And that's where the tractor, when the farmers would come up to work the field, they would go from that field to the big one. And that's the only way to enter that big field unless you come from the highway. But the trail around that field is muddy. And we took my car, which was a Toyota Tercel, and it wouldn't have made it around that field at all. And Well, we pulled it up. I had her drive so I could just get out. And when I get back, she could pull out while I'm putting my things away. And we pulled the car right into the beginning of that 2 trail. And it's roughly 100 yards long. Right at the far end of it, there's a little washout that crosses the trail. And there's water always flowing through it. But it's just, you step over it. The water itself is probably about that wide, and it's got a little bit of a mucky bank on each side, and you get to the edge and you just step over it. It's not big, but it's about 1.5 feet deep. So my car definitely wouldn't have crossed that. They drive the tractor across it, and some of the guys had 4-wheel drive trucks, and we could cross it with that quite easily. Well, walking down from the car to that big field, on each side of the road, these wild muscadines and kudzu and all this other stuff, it goes from the ground clear to the top of these mature pine trees, which are probably 60 to 70 feet. They're really big trees. And so it's a wall, a literal wall of foliage. And when you're walking down it, you can't see into it. There's been 50 or 60 times we walked down there, and you can hear animals moving through the leaves back there, but you couldn't see them. Even in daytime, it was just too thick. And as I was walking down that 2 trail, I made sure to stay in one of the tire tracks. It's just 2 white sand stripes going from one field to the other, where the tires have wore all the vegetation away. And in the middle, there was a little strip of grass and, just the stuff that grows there. And I was staying on the sand, and I could hear something on my left side as I left the car, and it was walking, paralleling me. And I wouldn't hear it until I started moving. And I stopped. When I first heard it, I could hear my steps on the sand, and then I would hear the step to my left, but with my clothing moving around. I've got a rifle over my shoulder. I got my fanny pack, and with that little bit of rustling, I couldn't quite discern if I was actually hearing the step or not. And so I would stop, and it would take one extra step before it stopped. And I've done this 2 or 3 times, and that's when I realized there is definitely something walking there. And it stayed what sounded like 20 to 25 feet from coming out through that wall of foliage. It was back a little ways. And when I got to the end where that little ditch is, that I got to step over, as soon as I stepped, there's some leaves that fell out of the trees on the other side. And I heard a noise, and I wasn't sure what I heard. I thought it was a pig. The sows, the mother pigs, if they have young, they'll do this warning call to their babies. And it's sort of a growl grunt mix. It's a drawn out, and the babies know they fall in line behind mama, single file, and she takes off, and they stay with her, and she gets them to safety. And I thought that's what it was, because I didn't hear it until my foot hit them leaves, and the crunching sound. That's when I heard it, and I froze, and there was no other sound. It was just silent. And so I went ahead and I finished stepping over that little ditch, and I walked about 15 feet or so. I'm into the big peanut field, because that little ditch, that washout, is right at the edge of that large field. And well, I got into the field, and I turned to the left, expecting a pig to come out of that field, and I was going to shoot it, and nothing ever came out. And now the peanuts were not quite knee high out on the field during this time, but the copperhead snakes were horrible out there, and you can see between the peanuts, they were nowhere near maturity. They had planted, I guess, February. This was near the end of April, and so you could see each individual plant, but the copperheads would get under them. And so you really had to pay attention to where you were going. And I had snake boots on, but there's always a chance that boots going to be weak in the area the snake bites at, and I don't want to test them. And so I got my headlamp on, and I got it on the lowest setting. It's got a high or a low, medium, high, then a red light, a green light, and then it goes off. And each click of the button, it goes to a different level of brightness or a different color. And so I had it on the low setting. It's hitting the ground about 6 feet in front of me, so I can see the ground to make sure I don't step on a copperhead. And we see them every time we go out there. There's that many. It's insane. Mariana's horrible for copperheads and moccasins. And I crossed out, went to the trap, which should have had pigs in it, and it didn't. It was empty. There was no damage. There was still corn in it, which was odd. That trap was very rarely was it empty. Well, I was coming back, and when I got into that little 2 trail, I come up, I stepped over that little washout, and I heard that sound again that I heard when I was coming. But this time it did it immediately after I made the step, and I recognized that it was a growl, and it was such a deep, bassy. I mean, it sounded like it came from the bottom of a deep well. It just had almost an echo to it. It was strange, but it was such a deep growl. I knew it wasn't a pig, but that one little spot in my brain was telling me it was possibly a large pig, but I was thinking bear. And I am petrified of bears. I don't want to be around them. I've never encountered a bear in the wild, and I'm horrified of them. My brother-in-law works for the paper company, and he deals with them regularly. And he's told me 100 times, when you get around bears, you're going to smell a putrid odor. They will growl at you. They do a variety of different things, but you know it's a bear, and you got to present yourself bigger to scare them off. And well, immediately I hear the growl, my heart starts racing, and I'm thinking bear, and a slim possibility it's a large pig. And I'll deal with the pig, even though it's a more dangerous animal, but that's all I've done. Even as a child, we catch them with dogs. We hunted them with a not a pocket knife, but a fixed blade Bowie. And I was prepared. If it was a pig, I got a 7mm short magnum in my hands. I've got a knife in my belt. I got a pocket knife. We'd take care of it. But I kept thinking bear. And so I started walking toward the car, but trying to be as slow and quiet as I could. I stayed in the sand tire track, and I stepped on the opposite side of the road. He was on my right as I come into that 2 trail. And so I got on the left side of that trail, and he took a couple of steps, and then I could smell him, and it was the odor was so bad, and there was no odor when I came through at all. And it smelled so bad, it felt like it was warm, if that makes any sense. The odor was actually, when it entered my nostrils, it felt as though it were 30 degrees warmer than the ambient temperature. It just had a real warm smell. It was odd, but it was I don't know of anything that smells like that. It did have that wet dog odor that you hear so many people talking about. It did have a little bit of a urine smell to it, and not a feces smell, but maybe a I don't know. If you have a bunch of vegetation in a compost pile, as it starts breaking down, it puts off it almost smells like feces, but it's not quite feces. It's got a weird stench. He had that odor, just a variety of different smells, and it was overwhelming. The odor, you could taste it, and that's when I knew in my mind, I knew for a fact there was a bear there, and that's when it all became real to me. And now I'm scared to death. I made sure my rifle safety was turned off, which I already had one in the chamber, because these pigs are so fast. And if you wait until you're up on one before you put a bullet in the barrel in your chamber, it's too late. He's got you. And so I was already set for pig. I just turned the safety off, And I tried to walk, taking baby steps, heel to toe, very slow, very deliberate steps to where I wasn't making any noise. I didn't want to step on anything and draw attention to this bear to come in on me. As I'm going toward the car, he's walking with me. He's straight on my right side, but it's like he's, as I'm headed toward the car, he's coming toward me. I could hear it, and I knew he was getting closer. And I could hear he growled the whole time, but it sounded like he had pneumonia, or like people that smoke a lot. You can hear that wet, gurgly sound in their lungs. That's how he was breathing. And he would growl, and it was gurgly, but it had this, it was a demonic sound. I mean, it was like something you hear on TV. I've never heard anything like that in the wild, not to that extent. As I continued down that trail, hey buddy, I heard him when he got right up on this wall of this vegetation that's beside me. And he was so close. He was just behind me. And I focused on getting to the car. I could see the chrome rings that were around my headlights and my bumper. I could see the gleam of the moonlight off of. I got full-grown trees on each side of me. This trail is it's probably 8 foot wide, 8 to 9 foot across this 2 trail. And it's this wall of foliage. And the moon, if I remember right, it was to my left, but it was behind the treetops. So it was just completely black in this 2 trail. All I got is my headlamp. As he's coming close, hey girl, don't push me. Come on, Belle. As I'm getting closer, move. Here you go. As I'm getting closer toward the car, he's right up on me. He's just behind me a couple of steps, but he's getting on me. Then I hear him. I can hear the leaves. As it sounded like he spread all the vines and all that stuff growing. It's like he spread it and he stepped through. That's what it sounded like. I did not see him. I just heard it, but it was so close to me. And he stepped out, and I heard the crunch where he stepped on the leaves behind me, either on the side or the center of them 2 sand stripes and 2 tire tracks. And when he stepped out, I stopped. I quit moving, and I was praying, please don't let him know that I'm there. The wind was blowing from my right to the left, and so I knew he wouldn't have winded me when he was on my right side, and I was praying he didn't know I was there. Well, he's growling at me, and then I could hear this thud sound, and I could feel it through my feet in the ground. And he growled on the exhale, and he sort of snarled on the inhale. It was almost a continuous but it was like 2 different type growls with, each breath it would alternate. And I finally got the courage. Well, not courage. I was afraid. There was nothing brave happening with me at all during this time. But I finally got to where I had to turn to see what it was. If it was a bear, I had to prepare to shoot him. And as I turned, I broke my neck, so I don't have full rotation. I can't turn to my hard left or hard right. I have to twist my upper body from the waist. And well, I twisted as far as I could, and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't turn far enough. And so I'd have to shuffle my feet, just 1 foot at a time until my feet were facing the woods on my left side to be able to twist to see directly behind me. And as I finally got turned, I couldn't see that lime green of the peanut field. It wasn't 40 yards from me, and I couldn't see it at all. Everything was blacked out, and I thought I was fainting. Just my mind felt like I was blacking out, and I lost my vision is what I thought. And I could see everything was black, and I could see this striations in front of me, and I don't know if it was my vision. I had no idea what it was. I thought I was blacking out, and my brain couldn't comprehend what I was looking at. And he growled again, and it came from over my head, right? And that's when I got my headlamp on, and it's aiming to hit the ground 5 or 6 feet in front of me. And so it's hitting him probably mid stomach area. And what I was seeing was his hair, but he was so close to me. He was probably 2.5 feet. He was right there on top of me. And when he growled, I leaned back to try to see where, because nothing made sense. And I was expecting a bear 15 feet behind me. And that's what I was expecting to see. Something waist high growling at me, but it wasn't. He was up here. And when I finally leaned back, my headlamp hit him. I don't know if you can see, probably right here in the lower part of the shoulder, but it lit him up. I could see him just as clear as I can see you guys. And it was a caveman. I mean, there was no other explanation. There was nothing gorilla-like to him. This looked like a prehistoric man. And he was not happy. He had his fist balled up and his elbows at his side, and he would sling his fist to the ground and he'd stomp his foot and the whole ground would shake. I mean, my whole body would almost lift up from the percussion where he'd stomp. And every time he'd growl out at me like that, he had breath it smelled like fermenting oranges. And an earthworm, when you get a tub of earthworms to go fishing, that smell when you open it, it smelled like that and fermented oranges. And it was nasty. It's normally an orange smell would be fairly good, but it wasn't. It had a very sickening smell, almost like a pus, like an infection smell. And he kept growling, slinging his fists and stomping at me. And the rifle, the way I was turned, if I would have pulled the trigger without moving the rifle, I would have hit him somewhere in his shoulder. And that's a 7 short Magnum. And I was shooting Hornady SSTs at the time, which are, when they hit, if you shoot a deer in the shoulder with it, the whole front half of the deer is ruined. You can't eat it. And we use those for these pigs. You shoot them just behind the head, right there in the neck, and they drop. They don't suffer. They don't squeal. It kills them instantly. And that's why we use them. And I did not, and to this day, and I stand behind this, I did not believe that bullet would have done much more than really set him on fire. And
probably pissed him off worse.
Yeah, it was. He was so big, and I turned my back on him. I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. My heart was hurting. I mean, I had a pain in my chest, like I was having a heart attack. And I could hear, when my heart beat, I could hear it in my ear. Just a boom in both ears. It was just a bizarre, the whole experience. I was so afraid. I've never been that scared. And I had a high power rifle in my hands with the safety off. My finger was in the trigger slot. And if I would have jerked, it would have fired. But I was so afraid. I knew it wouldn't have done nothing to him. It would have got me.
How'd you get out of there?
When I turned back to the car, he kept stomping. He kept doing the growling, stomping the ground. And I was trying to figure out, how am I going to get from here to the car? I'm 50 to 60 yards from the car. And I could see Lisa in the car. I could make out her outline.
Can she see what was going on when this was happening from the car? Do you know?
Not at this time she did.
Okay.
But I was trying to figure out, and my brain was all over the place. I broke my back 3 times. I was born with deformed hips, and I physically cannot run. It's not possible for me. No matter what the situation, if my life or my family's life depended on it, we would all expire because I can't run. And so I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to get from here to the car without this thing swatting me? I mean, I was so close. When he'd swing his fist down, the breeze would hit me in the face. He was that close to me. And finally, it dawned on me, get the headlamp on her, because this hitting the ground a few feet in front of me. And so I grabbed the headlamp and I rotated it toward the car, and I just started clicking the button on it, going through all the different light modes, and the high, low, or it was low, medium, high,
like
red, green. Yep, and I just kept flicking it as fast as I could click it. And finally, the headlights came on the car. And then the high beams came on, and then she started blowing the horn, and I could hear her from where I was at. She had the windows up with the air running, and she's screaming in the car using the F word, F and run, F and run. And that's when he took off, and he ran to my left side, which was toward Highway 73. And it sounded like a full-size F-150 left the highway and crashing through. I mean, I bet some of that stuff had to have been that big that he was snapping off. It was so loud. It was explosive. All that. He was just tearing everything down in his path. And I made it to the car. I opened the door because I knew nothing like that existed. And up to that point, I had never heard of Bigfoot or Sasquatch because we grew up in a farming family. We didn't do TV. We didn't have TV until I was probably 12 or 13. And by that time, I didn't care for it. I was always out doing other things. And so we weren't exposed to that. And this was 2011. And it was the end of 2012, early part of 2013, before I finally figured out what it was that I encountered. But when I got to the car, I thought it had to have been a bear, and I just seen it wrong. I was too close or something, but he was so lit up. That headlamp, I mean, it hit him here, but it lit him up. I could see everything on him. And I opened the door and I said, "Did you see that bear?" And she just cuts me off and said, "That wasn't no effing bear." And I said, "What'd you see?" And she said, "That was a man. That was a big man." And she said from where she was at in the car that the top of my head was about 6 inches below the bottom of his chest. She could see from halfway up his stomach. She could see from there all the way up on him because he was that much taller than I was. But he took up that whole road. He was so broad, and he wasn't like an athlete where he's shaped like a triangle with the broad shoulders, the narrow waist. He was thick, even the midsection, but his shoulders were it was like a creation gone wrong. His shoulders were so thick, it was too wide for his body, even as big as he was. His shoulders were way too large for his body. And it was it was looking into the eyes of a demon. And I could see his eyes. They weren't solid black. I've heard a lot of encounters that they're solid black eyes. They weren't. I could see the pupil in his eye. His eyes were brown, almost like a red-brown color. And then he had the black pupil. But the pupil and the colored part of his eye was so big. If he had normal eyes, like, the size of us, a human's eye, the colored part would probably be 1.5 to 1 3/4 times bigger than ours. It was just the proportions were, the pupil was so much larger on him than it would be for a human that size.
This person asked, was it upright when it took off?
I don't know. I wasn't looking at him. I was looking toward the car. When she started blowing the horn, that's when he ran.
And you know what? I don't think it would even matter, even if he had a TV at an early age and you even see Bigfoot on TV, even shows, because you're talking about you're out there in the elements. I mean, that's a whole total different story. It doesn't matter what you see on TV. That's got to be just scary, hearing the sound, not seeing it, turning around. Everything's just dark and black where you couldn't even see your traps. You couldn't even see the normal forest. And
it was so dark you thought you were going blind. Like, imagine that. Like, you could see with your eyes like normal, but it somehow blacks out. Yeah, that had to be like the opposite of kind of like a spiritual experience. That had to like make you so small.
I don't remember if it was what I'm talking to so many people about that in the beginning and in the early days of coming out with the encounter. I've talked to a lot, and someone, it may have been Wes, I was trying to explain to him about that. He was right there. he was 2 feet or less from me. He was so close to me that when he swung his hands, the wind off his fist I could feel it hit my face. He was that close. And when I turned, it was just, it was so strange because I could see where my headlamp was first. As I turned, I couldn't quite see all the way behind me. I could see the side of him. The headlamp had him lit up, and I could not understand what I was seeing. It didn't make sense because there's no animals that size. To me, it appeared to be a wall because I couldn't see the top of his head. It was probably from my chin or so down is about all I was seeing until I turned completely to where I could face directly behind me. And then everything was blacked out. And I didn't know, but that's what I was explaining to him. I thought I was blacking out. And he said, the human body, our eyes perceives distance, whether we're aware of it or not. And he said, your eyes were perceiving the distance of how close he was, but your conscious part of your mind couldn't comprehend that there was something on you. And I was trying to convince myself that I was blacking out.
And you're not used to seeing that kind of an image in the first place. You know,
right? I could see the hair is what I was looking at.
This is just a guess. I'm wondering, why not a lot of people have had this where you're at. I wonder if this creature knew since that you didn't have, like you said, you couldn't run, you broke your neck. He knew your body was kind of damaged that you can't escape from him. I'm just curious. I'm just wondering. I'm not.
Oh, right. I don't know. I never thought
think he wanted some claim to some of those pigs you guys were taken from there as well.
Well, I'll tell you what's strange, and I think you're absolutely right on that, because when we were trapping, we'd go and check the traps. Just as an example, if we were to go tonight and check the traps, we may have 8 pigs in one trap, 15 in a trap, 3 in a trap. Tomorrow we'd have 5 in a trap, 6, 10, but it would be like that. And then we went and checked traps because I wasn't the only one that was working this field. There were, I think, 7 of us total, 5 of us out there all the time. And 2 of the other guys had a couple of traps too. Well, then we go out there, we check the traps, we bring a trailer out there to load up all the pigs because the farmer doesn't want any to get away. He wants us to kill the mothers, the babies, which we didn't.
Makes sense.
We couldn't tell him because we were under contract. But if there was a mother that was in milk, or one that was obvious she was pregnant, or if we had little ones in there, then the mother and those got released. We did not shoot them because it is literally that willful killing, which is murder. And my beliefs, the importance of animals here are far greater than anyone really gives it credit. God had Noah build a 450-foot boat by himself, and it wasn't just to save the 8 of them, his family. They could have survived on a 40-foot boat. It was to save God's animals. They were that dear to him. And we're supposed to love what our Creator loves, and in return, He loves what we love. And there's, we have a purpose here, and it's not to abuse and kill everything that we see. And so when we're doing this, all the hogs that we shot, none were ever left to rot. At that time, we used to turn them into the mission in Panama City, which fed the homeless. All we had to do was gut them and skin them, and they would do the rest. And USDA got involved. I think it was around, I don't remember. I want to say 2010, may have been early 2011. They got involved, and we weren't allowed to do it no more. But there was a director that worked there, and we had to bring him in first thing in the morning before 8, and then he would take them. But we couldn't bring him in anytime after noon because the other director was following the guidelines. But anyhow, we didn't kill them and throw them in the woods. Nothing was wasted. But then we go to check traps, we're getting pigs in them every time we check them. We go out there and there's not a pig in none of the traps. And you could see where the corn's gone and everything's freshly rooted. The gate is closed. Nothing's out of line. There's no way the pigs could have gotten out. We don't use square traps because square trap, the pigs, the younger ones, the ignorant ones, will all run to the corner in fear. The older ones and smarter ones would use them as a stepping stool and would jump the trap. They would climb on top of them and get out. And so you use a round trap. They have no corners and they can't stack to escape. And that's the whole purpose of it. And there's no way they could got out, but yet there's no pigs in none of them.
Maybe
and the corn would be gone.
Maybe this one had kids, and it was It was using the pigs for food, and it was protecting its kids from you, or thinking you're a threat.
Very possible. Very possible. We had, I think it was 2 years ago, one of the men that worked that field with me during that time, he and I were hunting a river over here, close to where I live. And he lives about 1.5 miles from me now. And we were coming back. When we were on the river, I heard the knocking on the tree. And we would go there and he would drop me off. If I went with him in his boat, then he would drop me off and he'd run about 500 yards upriver or downriver. And then I'd have to be back at the bank at 11:30, and he'd pick me up and we'd go eat lunch. And that's how we hunted. So we wouldn't be on top of each other. And he dropped me off. I was heading back. He took off downriver. Well, I get 400 or 500 yards from the river and there's something beating on a tree back there. And then the howling, that whooping sound and the howlings, and I had a lot of activity and I knew what it was. This was I think it was 2 years ago. And so I went back to the edge of the river and I walked downriver until I got to where the boat was parked, and I sat there and waited on him. I didn't want to be out there, but I didn't say nothing to him until when he brought me home. The whole time it was, I was dwelling on that because I've hunted that river for a long time and I've never had any issues, never had no activity. And now it's over there. We pull up my yard and I said, William, I want to ask you something. And I didn't know how to say it. He's much older than I am. And he is a very simple man, straight farmer, no glam and glory. He's just a simple man.
Simple blue collar. And
we pull up out front and I said, William, I want to ask you something. And please don't think I'm crazy. But I got to ask you, this is aggravating me. And I said, you remember Sonny's property off 73? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, come on, guys, get up. I told him, I said, well, I ran into something out there one night. And before I could finish explaining to him, he said, you saw a Sasquatch. I said, excuse me? He said, you saw a Sasquatch. I said, yeah, I absolutely did. I said, well, how did you know that? Because I've never spoken it to him or the other guys that were involved. And he said, when we were out there in 2011, and I'm thinking it was the same time as he said it was spring, and that's when I had my encounter. He said we were out there working the island field. It's got it looks like it's a big peanut field, and it's got one little circle clump of growth. It's a wet area, and in Florida you can't harvest the trees or do anything in a wet area. And so Sonny took advantage of all the land he could till up and plant, except for that area he couldn't do because of the water, the natural spring head that's in it. Well, that field, Brian and William were working that field, and this other guy, Russell, well, they get out in the field and they all go separate ways. Well, Brian got run out of the woods by one, chased him out, and he ran all the way to the truck, got in the truck and waited. It didn't follow him to the truck, but it chased him pretty close. And he sat there waiting because the other two were still out there. And so Brian waited on him, finally got out of the truck. He's got his rifle on the hood and he's just watching in case it showed itself. Well, then Russell was in the woods between the island field and the big field. That's where where my traps were. I was coming back from big field when I had my encounter. Man, Russell's in the woods between them, and this thing stepped out behind a tree and roared at him, and he didn't know what it was. So he takes off running, and it charges him. And he ran with everything he had, and he said he was loading his shotgun. He had a shotgun with him, and he's just stuffing shells in it. And it chased him to the point when he got out on the field and was inside of the truck, he stepped out right there at the edge of the field, but he didn't go no further. And Brian was able to see him when he stepped out. And Russell, he kept collapsing from exhaustion. He got his truck and he told Brian, he said, I put every shell I could fit in that gun. 7 of them was for him. I was going to put them all into him. If he kept coming, that last one was for me. And he was dead serious. He was going to take his own life if he couldn't stop him with 7 slugs. But William ended up, he was down, there's a spring head there close to where the truck was parked. And evidently, William was still back there. Brian and Russell at the truck. This thing went back in the woods and headed up toward the truck where William was at and started screaming and roaring at him. And William didn't waste no time to see what it was. He just grabbed his stuff and tore out and got back to the truck. But they never told me. And Brian ended up, that was what I was mentioning to Connor here just recently. The big field that's right on 73. The trail, the little 2 trail I was on when I had the encounter, the direction where that thing ran, Brian was in there during the daytime and he found a cave. And I know where a few caves are on that property. Only one of them is big enough you can walk in. The others you have to either bend down pretty low or you got to crawl to get. I didn't go in them. I'm definitely not doing that because all of them have a trail coming into it and a trail coming out. There's something living in the caves without a doubt. But Brian was in that patch of woods where that thing ran. He went into the big field, was hunting it. But when he come back, if you get on the field and you walk towards 73, it opens up a little bit and you can go in there from that end. You can't come back to that 2 trail because it's too thick closer you get to it. But he went back there and he found a big cave. He went down in the cave. There were piles of bones on one side of the cave. And he said they were all in order. There's a pile of big bones. He said they're just piled up. Like a kid who went in there playing and just piled the bones up. A foot or 2 away is a pile of medium bones. A foot or 2 away is a pile of the little bones. And which he knew that was strange. Well, he got down in there and there's a lake. Just water. And he's using a light that's got it's 500,000 candle power. It mounts on the rifle scope, and then it's got a pigtail. You plug this adapter cord in, and the battery sits on your belt. And it's one of them coiled up wires that you can stretch it, and it just kind of springs back. The whole wire is made of that, but it's made to put on a rifle for night hunting. It's exceptionally bright, and it'll shine the trees. At 600 yards, it'll light the trees up on the other side of the field. Well, he said he was down in the cave and he shined it across the water and could not see the other side of that cave. It went under that field, and that field is huge. But he wanted to go back because he said there's a ledge that goes when you come into it, where the water is on the left. He said there's a ledge that goes to the left down that wall as far as you can see, and there's a ledge that continues straight from where you enter it. And it looks to be rectangular. And when you come into the cave, you're at the corner of it. And he wanted to go back and get some guys to go with him, and he was going to walk it just to see where it goes. And I'm thinking maybe that's where they're hiding at. I don't know. I've gotten a couple of years, 2 years ago, a man who lives in Cottondale, which is close to Marianna. It's kind of like a suburb, I guess, of Marianna. His family has been there for a long time. And every member of his family, including his grandmother, his great-grandmother, his aunts, all of them have had a sightings or encounters up there. And he was telling me he had 3 sightings on 73, and he was explaining to me, and he says, he told me he's seen 3 different times. He's seen a white one and he's seen 2 black ones. And he said, if you know, do you know where Marianna is? I said, yeah, I know where it is. He said, well, there's a road there, Highway 73. And if you go halfway down it, that's where I had my sightings, and my jaw dropped. That's exactly where I had my encounter. There's a pump station. Quit, Benji. Quit, buddy. There's a pumping station down there. And as he was coming down up on that pumping station, there's some bushes or something was close to it, but he's seen it. It was behind the bushes. And as he approached it in the headlights, it squatted down, but it couldn't squat low enough to get behind him. And so he's from his armpits up, he's above the bushes watching him. And he stopped the car, had it in the headlights, and he said it just sat there looking at him. But as it turned its head, he had eye shine. When he moved his head a certain way, he said, when I seen the eye shine, I knew it was real because it was moving his head. And he took off. But he's seen 3 different times. He's seen them right there at the same area.
Sounds like it's the nesting area.
Oh, yeah.
And he's not really trying to kill you. He's trying to get you off his nesting area. This is my area.
I think they're using the caverns below, because there's caverns that go all the way under the Marianna Courthouse and then the Florida Caverns State Park, and there have been strange anomalies captured there. I was just investigating Highway 73 2 days ago on Tuesday, and I shot this one mansion that was on the cover of a zombie film, but then I also went down Iron Bridge Road, which is, I think, on the other side of 73 that you guys had your encounters, but it's down from Hinson's, where there's tons of caves too. So that whole area is filled with caves. But yeah, I was investigating the Iron Bridge that has a troll, and right when I was listening to your story again, I'm like, this troll was probably just one of the Sasquatches from the area, because there has been more than 10 people that I've heard stories from just in 73. So think how much it lurks into the swamps and forests, and of course Torreya State Park and the Ocheesee Pond. All the waterways are linked: the Chipola River, the Apalachicola River, the Chattahoochee River. They use these waterways as just highways, and then the cave systems almost as portals.
I gotta tell you, man,
absolutely,
the way you told that, I'm telling you, people in the chat, I know that they're gonna think the same way as me. You told it where I visioned of what's happening. You mentioned every little thing that you saw, you heard. I was visually imagining being there.
Oh, wow.
You tell it awesome. I mean, I'm not making fun of what you saw, but I'm just saying.
Oh no, I understand it.
I could feel it. I could feel your fear.
Yeah, it was horrible, and I still have the occasional nightmare from it.
I can imagine.
It's strange. I've had, I don't know, probably a couple of hundred nightmares from after that happened. I was having them every night of the week for probably 2 years, 3 years, but on the nightmares, he comes to my house. He's at my house. He's in the house. He's by the bed, and they're not as bad now. I still have them, but it's just a handful of times a year.
What? That's PTSD right there. That's PTSD.
Well, I still to this day see a psychiatrist for PTSD for that encounter. I finally had to seek help in September, I think, August or September. I ended up seeking help for it. It was so bad, I couldn't even be anywhere that there was woods. I was that afraid. And it's Wes Germer and Lynn Smith were a huge help in me being able to get back out and enjoy. For me, if I had a choice to be able to do anything in this lifetime, whatever I choose to do would absolutely involve the woods somewhere. I would be in the woods. It's just where my love is, my heart is.
Yeah. Does it bother you when you hear people say it's all false, it's none of it's real, none of that, does that bother you at all now, knowing that what you just experienced? It
used to. Yeah, it used to make me a little angry. My sister, I got two sisters, and one of them I'm extremely close to. She's my hero. She's 2 years younger than me, but she's a phenomenal human. One of the greatest people God's ever put on this earth. And when I first shared what happened to me with her and her husband, they're Christian folks, they're really good people. And that was one of the things that both of them said. They kind of made a joke out of it, about what I was taking, what kind of drug, or if I was drinking, or just kind of, they weren't being serious, but they were making a joke about it. And I told them, I said, I'm being dead serious. And to the point that I would bet the lives on all of my children on what happened to me. And it's happened. I've had several encounters, had quite a few, but that was the one, I call that one my bad encounter. That's the one that really messed me up. And it changed just everything about me, who I was to who I am now, was due to that encounter. And I've seen quite a few of them through the years. I'm still very scared of them. I do not go investigating them. I don't go looking for them. What I do, I love being in the woods, but when I'm out there, I film every day of the week. This morning I filmed probably about 30 minutes here, but I'm always filming. It's a hobby. I've done it as far back as I can remember. And I go in the woods and I just film. And if I find like where the trees have been over, where it looks like somebody was attempting to make a teepee, and they'll stack trees up to where the only thing missing is the cloth covering, is to actually stretch a covering over it. The framework's there, but they'll stack them up against a living tree. But it's not a human, because some of these logs are 40 feet long. They're big and really heavy. You
got to be a very strong man. Yeah.
You'd have to be insane.
Oh, you have to be a superhuman. You'd have to be a human hybrid.
Do you feel like coming on here, telling us your story, do you feel that it kind of helps you now to get it out of your system in a way?
It does. Absolutely. Every time I tell it, it helps. And one of the things I started doing, and I think it was about November, I believe, when I started it, that encounter is the one that really impacted me, was that one. And so I started intentionally, every time it would come to me, which is every week it'll come to me what happened. But I started changing it, how I remembered it. And it's easier to explain, like when you have dreams, you go to sleep at night and you have a dream. Now, are you able to control your dreams?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Everybody, every living person has that ability. And I don't know exactly how I learned to do it. It was by accident, but when I learned, when you have a dream, if there's a part of you that knows you're dreaming, and anything that comes against you to scare you, you can alter it. And usually the bad guys that are getting after me in my dreams, they're usually running, or they're in a car. They're in some type of vehicle if they're not running, but they're coming after me quick. And I started changing my dreams to where they're on this little child, a toddler's train set, and they're sitting on it like a little kid. And then I in my dream, I'll alter them to look like a little Winnie the Pooh or something really goofy. And I'm able to overcome that dream. And I started trying to remember that night the same way, changing the way you look. And I was successful to where when I started remembering him back, like the color, I remembered him as being mostly red with some black tint. And now the memory is he was mostly black, but he had a little bit of red tint and some gray. That my memory's getting a little messy on the hair color, the face. I can remember it, but now it's more like I'm remembering a dream of encountering it instead of remembering it as an event.
The way you're dealing with it, yeah.
Yeah, but the smell of his breath, I cannot. I've tried to get that to where I can't remember it the same, and it's just there's nothing I can do to. I haven't been able to change that at all. But it's
they say smell is directly linked to your memory, so that makes perfect scientific sense. And something that putrid and just not normally natural combination of fermented oranges and then worms, but it makes perfect sense of a caveman. And I just wanted to mention real quick, right when I moved to Mariana, I hopped on the internet and I was doing research, like, oh, what's the closest Bigfoot story to around here? And I found Donnie's story, the Mariana caveman. So it's just crazy, the cycle of life, how, we all circle around. And I also remember hearing one of your earlier stories that you mentioned on Sasquatch Chronicles. And I find it interesting because I know you've encountered these creatures many times, and you even thought it was a bear after you saw it. But you had that one-eyed, mutilated, strange creature encounter when you were a younger man. So
yeah, that was on Panama City Beach.
So that the Bigfoot idea really didn't even ring with that thing either. You just thought that was like a monster or something, just because.
No, that thing. I really don't think that was a Bigfoot at all, and I still don't. And Wes, I shared that one with Wes, and Wes said, "Well, there's different forms of them, just like there's different people. You have the Oriental people, you have the Latino people, you've got the African descent. There's so many different forms." And I told him, I said, "Wes, it was none of that. This was a different. I don't know what it was. All the Bigfoot creatures that I've seen, it's right away when you see them, if you're close enough to make it out, that they have hair on their body. It's not fur, it's hair. You can see through it. You can see the skin through it. And in places, on some of them, it's long. The only places I've ever really seen it long was like on I know it probably sounds completely ridiculous, but it's like this part of the arm, like the elbow, that section, it seems like it's always kind of overgrown there. And then, of course, on the face, just like a beard. But I haven't, a lot of them have really thin hair, and you can see a lot of the skin in them, even the ones that have the black hair. But mostly what I seen was black or that orangey red color. But that thing that night on the beach, do we have time? And I'll tell you that one.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time for sure. Okay,
time
is eternal when the stories are this good.
Oh, thank you. I wish I didn't have them. I wish they were something I read somewhere instead. But
I know beach, you are big on the Creator, though, and the Creator gives you a path that you can handle. So your knowledge is being spread, and it's helping people. And you had to take the small fall, but you're looking out for people. You've saved many lives already just with the simple knowledge you're spreading.
Lord, I hope so. That's my whole intent. If we can save just one person, prevent them from experiencing something like that, or prevent them from being harmed or worse, taken, then it's been worth it. The ridicule, the nonsense that I've had emailed to me, I've had a lot of goofiness.
Tell your story. I'm going to be listening to it. I got to run upstairs real quick, but I'll be listening. I'll be right back. Tell your story.
Yes,
okay, no problem.
But yes, down in Panama City, Donnie had an encounter that I actually heard on the internet again through my research. And then when I first talked to Donnie on the phone, he was telling me about some of the strange anomalies that have happened. And then, boom, he's telling me a story that I start recalling in my head. And it was just a trippy experience yourself. And I hope somebody else has heard this story before. But this is the man. This is the face. Here's the story.
Yeah, thank you, Connor. Thank you so much. I'll tell you where it happened. You may be very familiar with that area. On Panama City Beach, they've got, it used to be called Back Beach Road. I don't know if it's still called that or not, but it's the main road the most north road that goes from Panama City, Florida, across Panama City Beach and to Destin. I think it's 98. Down, not quite. Not halfway down the road, closer toward the east side, going down Back Beach. There's an area called Colony Club. They got a golf course, they got driving range, which is right out by the highway there, and there's some fancy homes in their upper class area.
It's right by my grandparents' house. I can't wait till they hear this.
Oh wow! But in the Colony Club, if you'll go down into Colony Club and take a left, follow it down, you'll come through all of them houses. Them upper class houses, a lot of the beach's political people, the mayors, Richard Jackson, which I grew up with him and his dad had a home in there. The Cooks, a lot of well-known political people live in that area. Nice homes. But if you follow that road down, you'll get down toward the end of it, and there's a road that cuts off on the left side called Moonlight Bay Drive. During this time, Moonlight Bay Drive was a dirt road. And if you went down the dirt road, you got a ditch on your left side, a pretty deep ditch. And you follow it down, it goes past the power lines, which all of this is out in the woods. And it stops, and there's mature planted pine trees that start at the end of that road right in front of you that go to the bay. About 150-yard stretch is of pines, and you have to go left or right, or you'll drive off in the pine trees. If you go right, you can go about a half a mile, and then it dead ends. They had no houses. They had nothing back there during this time when we had our encounter. But at the end of Moonlight Bay, if you take a left, when you get to the T, you have to turn one way or the other. If you turn left, you go about 50 yards, and it makes a 90-degree right-hand turn, and there's a ditch right there. If you don't make that turn, you'll go off into the ditch. It's really deep. You turn to the right, and you got 115, 120 yards, and you're at the bay. And we would go trout fishing right there, because you can literally, if you got a 4x4, you can back it up to the water's edge, and you can sit in the back of your truck and fish. Well, me and my best friend Eddie, his girlfriend Christy, and my girlfriend at the time, Celeste, we had nothing to do. We had no money. I think I was 17 or 18 at the time. And so the four of us decided, let's just go out to Moonlight Bay and we'll just hang out and go park. I mean, it was a nice night. The weather was nice. It was just a really great time of the year. And I believe that was also April. It was beautiful outside. Well, we went down there and I pulled down that little road as far as I could get without getting into the sand, which is right at the water. We stopped 30 or 40 feet from the sand and the bay's edge. Well, on the driver's side of the car, there's one row of pines that run right there at the edge of the road that go, to the bay. And they're big, huge planted pines. Directly behind the pines is a ditch. The ditch is dug out, and then all of the land on the other side of that ditch is about 3 foot lower than the side where the car is at. It's that whole area is swamp. Mm-hmm. And they had filled it many years ago, trying to raise it up some to plant it. And they did have pine trees planted in there, but they were young, 10 to 12 foot, the occasional 15-foot sapling. During this time, they were all small. Well, I was I got out and sat on the hood of the car. My girlfriend gets out, and I'm sitting above the driver's side front tire. And I've got my legs spread. She leans up against the car right there between my legs, and we're just talking, teenagers young people in love. And Eddie and his girlfriend, Christy, were still in the back seat of the car. We had the windows down. And as I was talking to Celeste, I look over her shoulder and looking like down at her, right past her head, I'm looking at the water in that little ditch. It's just a little narrow, 2 foot wide little strip of water, maybe 6 inches deep, but it's right there. And at the water's edge, there's this very, it's a bright green glow. You know them sticks you get, you break them and shake them, and they glow a bright green. It's that color. And it's just an odd shape, and it's down close to the water, and it's moving around, and I'm watching it. And her and I are talking, and I'm watching this thing the whole time, and I didn't say nothing to her because I didn't know if it was a glow fly or what it was. And it's directly behind her, probably 8 feet or 9 feet. It's right there. And it starts rising up. I mean, it's just gradually, it's moving about this speed, going up. And that's when I thought it was like a bobcat, a possum or something. I told her, I said, look behind you. There's a bobcat or a possum or something climbing the tree. Well, she turns around and looks. I said, do you see it? And she said, yeah. I said, ain't that cool? Or something on those lines. Well, anyway, she took off and went and got back in the car. She's from Ojai, California. And she ain't big into the outdoor stuff. Well, she gets back in the car. I hop down off the hood and I walk to the back window on my side, on the driver's side. And I said, Eddie, check it out. There's a bobcat out here. And Eddie, laughing, he says, I don't want to see no dang bobcat. And he rolls the window up. You know, had the manual windows. It was a 77 Nova. What? All right. You know, what the heck? I love the outdoors. And so I went back and I hopped back on the hood and I'm watching it. And it's gradually like it's floating. And I thought, it's fascinating, but it dawned on me, the only thing growing on that side of the ditch is longleaf pine. And you know how the bark is on a pine tree. If a chameleon lizard gets on it, you can hear him 20 feet away. You can hear his nails in that crunchy bark. And there was no sound. And I mean, no sound. There was not a sound in the air. And when I realized I couldn't hear him, then it dawned on me I couldn't hear anything. I mean, it was so still. It was almost a supernatural feeling. You know, it seemed like I was inside of a basement of a building, you know, with the lights out. I mean, that's kind of the feeling that I had. This thing rose up and it got about eye level with me. I'm sitting on the hood and I'm looking straight across the ditch at this lime green thing. And I was getting nervous because I couldn't hear it climbing. I couldn't hear the bark of the sapling. If it's climbing a sapling, I should hear it because it is so close to me. The trees right there, that one row of trees that run along the side of that ditch, the backside of the tree, all the roots are hanging out and from where the ditch would fill up and it eroded the soil away. So all the tree is kind of halfway in the ditch and half on this side. You know, it's 3 feet from the side of the car. That's the only thing separating the upper ground from that lower area is that one row of trees are every 8 or 10 foot, however they plant them. Well, it gets up and it looks kind of like it's shaped like a smiley face, like the smile. That green line that's what it looks like rising. And I could not understand what I was looking at. It was only one, like a smile, you know, if you were to draw a smiley face, how you do the mouth, it was like that in lime green. It gets up to a point and it kind of like dips and it rolls. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It shifted from where it was at. It moved a few inches and kind of rose up. But then it took on a different shape. The left side of it looked like the point of a triangle. It had it had that point to it. The right side, which should have been flat if it was a triangle, was kind of rounded. And it was just bizarre, but it was way too big to be a glowfly. I mean, this thing was probably the size of a silver dollar or a $50. And I just stared at it. I didn't know what it was. I had no idea, not even a clue. Well, then it moves again. It kind of dips down a little lower, and it morphs into a different shape, and it moved toward me, and it kind of lifted back up. And that's when I really got scared. I was kind of, I wasn't really scared before. I was just, I was on edge because I didn't know what I was looking at. Somehow it was climbing a pine tree, and it was not making a noise, and it was too steady to be anything flying. Nothing added up. But when it finally moved, if you look in the mirror at your eye, what you can see of your eyeball, the shape that your eyelids form, that sort of, I don't know what the design is, but you get what I'm saying. The visible part of your eye.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking at. And imagine the white part of your eye glowing lime green and the colored part being solid black. That's what I was looking at. But it was only just that one thing, and it was too big to be an eye. There weren't two of them. It was just that. And this was that night, around 10 o'clock, I think. So I hopped down and I jumped in the car and I cranked the car up. And this was a 4-door 77 Chevrolet Nova. And it's just a little 2-trail dirt road, a little sand road, with that one row of planted pines on the left with the ditch right there at the back side of the pines, and then huge planted pines on the right that go for about a half a mile. And so I start doing this 10-point turn, trying to get the car turned where I can get the headlights on him. And everybody's asking me, what is it? What is it? And I wasn't answering anybody. I was so focused on, I got to get it turned. I got to see what this is. I had no idea. I had no clue what it would end up being. I was thinking some type of animal or bug or something. I just didn't know what. Well, I get to a point, I turned the wheel as hard as I could, and I eased up. My bumper hits the tree. My headlight on my side, driver's side, is right dead even with the tree. Celeste is in the front seat on my right side. She starts screaming, and she slides down in the floorboard on her back, and she's kicking me and screaming at the top of her lungs. Christy's behind her. She starts screaming. I don't know if she went in the floorboard or if she just laid down in the seat. She went down. And then Eddie starts yelling. He's punching the headrest on my seat and punching the roof. I mean, everybody's screaming in the car except me. I mean, it was loud. My ears were cracking like a speaker about to blow. But the tree, where my headlight was hitting the tree, I couldn't see him. He was behind the tree. But the passenger headlight hit him in a way that it cast a shadow to the right of that pine tree in front of me. I could see a shadow on the bank, and it was the shadow of a person. And so I put it in reverse, and I turned the wheel as hard as I could, and I backed up, and I turned it the other way, and I pulled forward, and that's when he was right in front of me. And the bumper hits the tree. He's probably 5 feet in front of my bumper, and he's down. That lands about 3 foot lower right there than where the car was. And he was right in front of it, and there's a man standing there. His body is facing me, but he's got his head turned, and his head's facing the bay, looking toward the north. And all I can see is the side of his head, and his head was deformed. It looked like a mannequin, like a prop for a movie. He was covered in fur, not hair, little short, probably 1-inch fur, his whole body from the top of his head all the way down. And the main part was white. If you remember the old military's camo, it had these splotches of brown and black and all the different colors. That was the pattern that he had on him. it was like his base color was white. Then he had these patches of red and a brown, ashy gray, and black. He had these splotches all over him. His head was too small, like for his body. And it looked like he had these really pronounced eyebrows. Not the hair, but like the bone part. His face structure was really pronounced. But his forehead slanted and almost went back to almost like a point, but it wasn't a point. It wasn't really a cone head, but it looked like somebody hit him in the forehead when his bones were soft when he was a baby and mashed all the bones like backwards at a slant. Really strange looking. He had little bitty ears. It looked like our ears, but they were probably a half the size or smaller than what they should have been for somebody that size. But he's watching the road. I mean, he's right there. Everybody's screaming, and I don't know if I was so scared or fascinated. I don't know what kept me from not leaving and screaming too. I know I was fascinated with it, and I was scared. I was absolutely scared, but it didn't make sense. To get back there, that's a long drive from the blacktop to back where we were at. There's only one way to get in, and that was the way that we took. If anybody would have came back there to stun us or to hoax us, we wouldn't have been able to get back because there's nowhere to park. They would have blocked the road, and there were no tracks. We were the only car to come in. Nothing made sense. And I literally thought it was a mannequin. I just couldn't understand how was it moving its head. It just didn't make sense. The proportions were way out of whack, especially with the arms. His arms were really long, but the thickness, he had these huge round shoulders, but his arms, they were enormous. They were like this, but all the way down. Even, how our arms narrow at the elbow and at the wrist? His was the same diameter all the way down, all the way to the hand. It was so strange. And his knees, he didn't have fur on them, or they were caked in like a gray mud. His knees didn't look like there was fur on them, like he'd been kneeling in something. But he finally turned and looked at me. I'm sorry, I got my sinuses are driving me batty. He finally turned and looked at me. And when he looked at me, the headlight is hitting him. His face is in the beam, his upper chest. I mean, I got the high beams on him, and the whole upper part of him is in direct light of the high beam. From that close, there's no way possible he should have seen me, but somehow I know he was looking directly into my eyes. I knew it. And he looked up at me, but his other eye, as he was facing me, his right eye was fine. I mean, it was really big, but other than that, it was fine. The left eye looked like somebody either blasted him in the face with a shotgun or something whipped him. He got the bad end of a fight or something. I don't know, but he had that whole side of his face, his eye, his cheek, all of that was it was mangled. It didn't look like there was any eye there. It looked like when your children or grandchildren ride their bike and they crash on the driveway and they skin their knee up pretty bad. That's the way his face looked right there. But it was really deep lacerations. There was no skin or fur visible on it, and it was bright red, but there was no blood. There's no blood running down his face. It looked to be fresh, maybe a day old, but something happened to him, and he lost that other eye from. Belle, quit, girl. It's okay. But he ended up losing that one eye. But when he looked at me, he wasn't angry. There was no expression on his face at all. He had looked up and he stared at me, and I couldn't move. I wanted to go. I wanted to leave, but a part of me wanted to stay. But it's like my body was disconnected from my mind. My brain wasn't working in conjunction with my body. And he ended up, as he stared at me, he looked down at the water, and he took a step into that little ditch toward us, like he stepped coming toward the car, and that's when I snapped out of it. But the whole time they're screaming, it sounded like just a real faint mumble. I could barely hear him screaming. And we had the windows up, 2 females and 1 large male in the back, everybody screaming at the top of their lungs, and it sounded like a whisper. It was so faint I could barely hear them. But I got the car backed up, and we got out of there. I don't know how we got out without hitting anything. It's a miracle I did not wreck.
You did. You just don't realize it.
Yeah, I may have. But what's so strange, we took the girls, dropped them off, and I stayed with Eddie that night. We got back to his house, and I told him, I said, Eddie, let's get up first thing in the morning. We'll go back, because there's definitely going to be footprints right there. Because when we go trout fishing there, all the bait minnows, the bull minnows that we use, we catch them in that ditch with a scoop net. The ditch is only maybe 2 feet wide, a few inches deep, but it's full of bait fish. And we'll go there and scoop us up, 2 dozen, 3 dozen minnows, and a lot of trout. It's a good area to fish. And so we were going to go back, and that soft muck that's beside that water, there would definitely be tracks there. We got up around 6 o'clock, and it's storming, it's raining so hard. But we drove out there anyway. And as soon as we get there, that ditch it's 3 or 4 foot deep. It's full. It's all out into the pines. And we waited. It was a couple of days, and the rain was gone. All the water went back to normal, and there was nothing to be seen. Whatever was there was washed away. But it was not a Sasquatch. I don't know what it was.
But you ever ask yourself, why you? I mean, you just not have one experience. You have 2 of them. So what is it with
I have
you?
a lot
he has
of
more
them.
than 10.
I have a lot of them. I've seen a lot of things. The only time that I was outside of paranormal stuff that's happened, the only time that I was ever something physical happened was I don't remember if I was 13. It was before, when I turned 15, I was able to get a motorcycle license. Back then they allowed it if you were 15, and you couldn't go over, I think it was 150 cc or something like that. But I had a motorcycle I bought when I was 14, but Mama wouldn't let me drive it to school because I didn't have a learner's permit / motorcycle endorsement. And so I was riding a bicycle at this time, so I'm thinking I was 14, but I don't remember. But there's a dirt road, and it actually runs the power lines on Moonlight Bay Drive that go to where that encounter happened when the 4 of us were out there. Those power lines go from an area, it's Big Daddy Drive, where they got a trailer park, where there's an old logging road that runs parallel to that. And we call it Stuckey's Run. And we ride our bicycles. It's a long ride. And it goes from almost the halfway bridge to Highway 79. And you could ride that whole way and stay in the woods. We were riding our bikes. I think there were 4 of us, 3 or 4 of us. And I was the kid with the short legs, and I was slow at everything involving my legs, including the bicycle. Well, we come out of this area that's really thick. We're in line. It was Mike, Steve, and I think our friend Stoney was with us, and then me. I believe it was 4 of us. I was the last one. We're coming down this old logging road out in the woods, and it's really thick. It's like you're in a cave. The growth goes over the road. It's awesome to be out there. In the heat of the summer, you're in shade during a large portion of this trail. Well, we're running as fast as we can because at the end of this little cave area, it opens up. It's all big planted pines, and it's growth probably 3 foot, and it goes up. There's a lot of big, thick stuff out there, but the majority of the stuff's about 3 foot high. But every time we would come through that area, we would get hit with pine cones, and we never knew why. None of us ever heard of Bigfoot. We were kids. We rode skateboards and rode bicycles and played with 3-wheelers, and that was our life. It wasn't books and TV shows. So we knew when we got to this area, we would probably get hit by a pine cone. And so everybody's pedaling as fast as they can. Everybody passes me. I'm at the back as usual. And when I get out in the area, something hit me in the back, and it flipped me up. I was still holding the handlebars, but it flipped me completely upright, and I crashed. Well, I started yelling for Mike and them to come back, and they turned and came back, but there was no sound. Nothing moved in the bushes. There was nobody around us. You could see it's fairly open, but there's a lot of growth. The majority of it's about 3 foot. You can't see the ground, but if there were a person out there, it wouldn't take long. You'd be able to figure out where they were. I was yelling. I thought a bird speared me.
But you know what it sounds like? You heard people talk about how they're mediums and they could talk to dead people or see.
Oh yeah.
See like dead people. It sounds like there's something about you where you're almost like a medium in a way, where these cryptids, there's something about you that they sense. I don't know if they sense that you're friendly or we could take this one. I don't know, but there's something about you that attracts them.
There is absolutely something that draws them. Several people that I've spoke to, even this year, are under the impression that it's due to my Native American ancestry. Maybe. My biological father was Choctaw. And
have you ever talked to like a medium person or something that to see if they sense something that's with you by any chance?
I talked to a lady in South Carolina, or I don't remember, North Carolina or South Carolina. It was at the reservation. I think it was North Carolina. We went up there, and I did speak to a medium there. It wasn't about the Bigfoot, but I had a lot of ordeals my entire life with paranormal stuff happening. Okay, wherever I was at, things always happened. And I was trying to get answers on that. And she said, "You already know." And I said, "No, I don't. I wouldn't be here talking to you." She said, "You're a beacon because you are a psychic. You're a medium." I said, "No, I'm not."
There we go.
And well, then I ended up years later, we went to it was a conference on the wild hogs. And there was a guy there. And when we walked by, his wife grabs me by the arm. And she said she knew me. I don't know who these people were. And a real nice lady. She wasn't being mean at all. Well, we ended up talking, and she was supposedly a medium. And I'm pretty sure she was, because she said, "You having problems with the paranormal?" I said, "Yeah, I am, but why? Why are you asking?" It just didn't make sense. I'm here to learn about the wild pigs, the new styles of traps, the things we can do to improve on what we were doing for these farmers. But she pegged me out somehow, and she said the same basic thing. She said the afterlife and the other side, which according to her, the other side is not the dead people. It is an entirely different level, different civilization. And she said it's the same as where we're at now, but it's like a completely different line of it. She said it's kind of like colors. If you take black and break it down, it's black, and then it's a dark gray and a light gray. She said all these different colors. Imagine them being where we live in the black one. Well, we got this same environment and 20 different shades of the same color, and different things happen in each environment. Well, you're able to see what's in these other colors, and they're able to see you. And it was just a strange situation altogether. The whole thing was odd.
Do you have somebody's asking, interesting stream, can you post Donnie's channel? Do you actually have a channel?
I do. Yeah, it's Standing Goats Rescue. Standing Goats Rescue.
Yep, Standing Goats Rescue. And if you search Donnie Miller, most of them will come up. He has tons of videos, just ranging from outdoors videos to scary story time by the saltwater, you know? So you get a wide range from Donnie. Donnie,
yeah, we share our life here.
Could you finish that that last story, though, with the Sasquatch when you guys were young boys?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I get sidetracked really.
No, we all got sidetracked. I just haven't heard this one, so I just want to add it to my bank of history. You know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That ain't no problem. Well, what happened? And I thought a bird flew into me, and in my mind, I was imagining something like a crow or a seagull. It felt like a big bird hit me in the back, and it was burning, and I thought that the beak of the bird pierced my back and it broke off. There wasn't no bird on me, but I couldn't touch. It was the part that hurt the worst was I couldn't touch it. It was in that void in your back where you can't reach. And so I called Mike over. I said, see if I'm bleeding. I think a bird hit me, but there was no bird on the ground. Mike pulls my shirt up and he said, oh my God. And he called Stoney over. Well, they come over there and everybody's flipping out. I said, what is it? You know, what's going on? I'm scared. Nobody's saying nothing. They're calling each other over. And he said, it's a handprint. And it went from my both shoulder blades. It was the whole upper part of my back. And he said, it is a crystal clear handprint. Just like that. Somebody took their hand like that and just smacked me right in the back. But it almost knocked the wind. It did knock the wind out of me, but not like when you're a kid and you fall off the roof and land on your back. It wasn't that hard, but it did knock the wind out of me slightly. I hit the ground. I was able to talk. I started yelling for them to come. But that same spot right there, nothing else happened. We left and everything was good. But that same general area, probably 100 yards from that exact spot, we went camping out there. And it was me and Mike and his little brother, Steve, and we took our bikes. They had, we didn't have nothing. We had a poor family growing up. Daddy worked to the bone to provide for us. And so, like our bicycles, there was the neighbor yard. So these bugs are aggravating the tar out of me. This neighbor would always have yard sales, and she had these bikes. And there was a real nice bike she was selling real cheap. And then there was this clunker. It looked like somebody took 10 different broken bikes and took pieces off each one and made a bicycle. Well, I finally got enough money together to go get it. It was just a few dollars. And I get up there and, well, Mike and Steve I think Steve got a new bike, and then Mike got the good one that was there. And the only one left was that clunker bike. So I got it. And it ended up actually being a phenomenal bike. They're all BMX bikes. You know, what all the kids, the young boys and teenagers always got these BMX bikes, even though they can't do a trick to save their life. Well, we went camping on them. And we get out there, we set our tent up. Well, Mike and Steve got their bikes. They put their bikes together against a pine tree right there by our tent. And we're close to that road. That's Stuckey's Run. I mean, we're feet from it. 40 feet, 50 feet, just far enough in if a truck or something came by, because on the weekend, the older kids get out there partying, and we didn't want them to see us and, cause us grief or just, we didn't want trouble. And we were just far enough off the road that if they come by, they wouldn't have been able to see us. So Mike and Steve's bikes are together against a tree. They got theirs locked up. No, I'm sorry. They didn't have theirs locked up, but they had them pushed together and against the tree. My bike was a piece of junk. I mean, it wasn't worth nothing. And so I just had it plot, just wherever I dropped it at is where it stayed. And I just set mine out. Mine's kind of right there in the open, but mine is right there by the tent. I mean, it's just a couple of feet from our tent, and theirs is a little further away. If somebody coming from the road, they could have got in and grabbed those two bikes and left, and we'd have never known. Well, all night while we're camping, we can hear stuff moving around the tent. And every now and then you'd hear stuff hit the tent, real small things, nothing big. But it was all night. And a few times we thought we heard breathing and the grunting sounds. We heard stuff all night. We get up the next morning, we go out, and my bike is gone. These two really nice bikes, one of them's brand new, and the other one is pretty close to it. High-end bikes. Steve's was a bike called the Mongoose, and it was pretty expensive. I don't remember what Mike's was, the yard sale one. But mine was just a mix of stuff. It was spray painted. The seat had paint on it. I mean, it was a jalopy. And somebody stole my bike. And we were freaking out over it. But it was funny because the bike wasn't worth nothing. It was garbage. And they come in and took mine. And they risked getting all the way up right there 2 feet from the tent to get it. Why didn't they take the other two that were closer to the road? Well, we're getting our stuff together to go leave. We couldn't find the bike. We searched. There's no bike. It's gone. So we're going out on the road to leave. There's a scrub oak right there by the road, 15 foot tall probably, and it's pretty bushy, pretty thick scrub oak. My bike is in the top of the scrub oak. It's laying on top of all the leaves. Like somebody went up a step ladder and just gently, if they would have thrown it, I'm thinking it would have fell through or at least fell into the limbs. It wasn't. It was like it was rested on it. It was the weirdest thing. And we were throwing stuff at it, shaking. We finally got it to fall. But other than hitting the ground and busting the reflector off the pedal, there was no damage to it. Whoever took it, the seat was twisted, and it didn't hit on the seat. It hit on the side of the handlebar and that pedal. But whoever took it evidently tried to ride it. I would think. I don't know. But the seat was a little twisted. Handlebars were twisted, but I think that was from where it fell out of the tree. But somehow, I don't know if a Sasquatch did that, but nobody came up. And where we were at, I'm thinking it's 4 to 5 miles to get to the blacktop either direction. And you can go through the woods and head straight south, and we were only maybe a mile at best, 3/4 of a mile to a mile from Back Beach Road, Highway 98. But you can't get through it. It is so thick, and if anybody were to come that way, we would have definitely heard them. There's just too much deadfall and stuff you got to go through. But we never heard anyone. We heard things moving around the tent, but nothing ever came close enough to get my bike. And that's what was so strange. And why take the nastiest one? That was our train of thought. And we laughed about that. And, you go to jail for stealing a bicycle. Why would you go to jail for stealing something that should be in a trash can? At least get the $200 bike. Don't get the $5 one. Get that, make sure you're going to jail for a good one.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was a juvenile one. Probably just kind of curious if it was a Sasquatch. Could be the fairies or pixies too. Just maybe appreciating you, the old hunk of junk that you had, and they were trying to tribute it. But yeah, that's super interesting. And it's not just like a tire or a piece of wood. That's a whole bike frame. So that takes a lot. I think it snuck up on you, just like how you were looking for a bear, 15 yards behind you, and it was 2 feet behind you. They have a way of somehow closing that gap in a split second. They're the master in disguise.
Yeah, they're absolutely. And, I've had a few times that I've seen them through the trees and things, especially these last 4 years. And you'll see them going by. And it almost seems as though they're on a cart, like they're I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's like they're drifting. They're not really physically touching the ground. I mean, you can hear the steps, you can see them, but it's like you could balance a champagne glass on top of their head and it never spill. They move so smoothly. But several times I'd see the movement, and every once in a while I'll catch one. I'll see the movement, and then there'll be a spot between the trees where they're crystal clear. You'll see the entire body as it goes through, and there's no doubt what it is. Absolutely no doubt. They'll get behind a tree, 60, 70 yards from you. You can focus on it. You never see him again. And you can do a big circle, and he's gone. Just gone. I don't know where. I don't know how they do that. I don't have an explanation for it. I don't know. I wish I did, but there's these last few years, things have been ramping up. People I've talked to, for me personally, they have. We had our lease not too long ago. It was this year. We was out there building the hog trap, and I seen I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it. It looked like a frog, but on two legs. Had the head of a frog, of a bullfrog. And it was so bizarre. It wasn't very big, a foot tall, maybe a little over a foot, but he took off running, and it was the most bizarre thing. And I've never seen nothing like that. And me and Kim and Rosie were out there doing that trap, and he wasn't 5 or 6 feet from me. And he was watching me at first, and then he took off, and I could hear him going through the leaves, and he was basically beside me. And as it come by, I could hear it where he was. I knew where he was moving, but I couldn't see him. And I could see under that stuff, not real good, but I should have been able to see him. And somehow I couldn't. I seen him when he was by that tree stump. When he was watching me at first, I seen him. He was 8 feet from me. I was putting the camera up, on a game camera up, to watch the trap, and he was right, like, straight in line with me. And I don't know what that was. And I've never seen nothing like that. And then I had several people from our YouTube family, from our channel, and I had a good friend of mine, Jeff, my brother Jeff from Georgia, and they sent me video clips from other people that have seen the same type of thing. I don't think it's the same creature, but it's pretty close to it. I forgot to turn my ringer off. I'm sorry.
Hey, Eric, you're muted right now.
There we go.
Oh, shit. I was muted.
I saw you talking a few times. I was trying to hit my ear for you.
No, it's just someone
the stream.
Have you guys gone hunting together? And I was saying, no, we have not, but we should, because if we're going barefoot hunting with a medium, you're a medium, man. We need you with us.
I definitely plan on linking up with Donnie here soon. We're only about 25 minutes from each other. Today was actually one of our target dates, but we're having so much fun on the chat that we're covering all the bases. But I'm off this weekend, and I'm definitely trying to link up with Donnie, and if not this weekend, then next. But yes, the time is coming to combine the stars.
Yeah, and you're in a good area. The Turia. Me and Kim and Rosie went there a month or two ago, a couple months back, and it was a Sasquatch. I have no doubt about that. But when it stepped out behind the tree where I could see it, I thought it was a black man with no shirt on.
Mm-hmm.
And just, it doesn't make sense. You've been to Turia. You know how bad it is. You walk 20 feet down the path without touching any bush, and you'll have 15 ticks on you.
Oh, yeah.
They're horrible in that area. And this dude was out in that mess. And we were on the Turia challenge. We just got on it and went 500 or 600 yards down it. We got to a point, I started getting that feeling something was off in a big way. And it was so overpowering, and it kept getting more intense. And finally, I told Kim and Rosie, I said, look, stay right here for a minute, because I don't feel right. Something ain't right. And I told her, so I'm going to go ahead just a little bit further to see if it eases up, because there's a bear, there's something here. We're not supposed to be here. Whatever's here is not going to be good for us. And it was such a bad feeling. It was a feeling of being watched and a feeling of being in danger. It was both of them. And I went ahead probably 50 yards. I didn't want to get far from them in case something was there close. But whatever it was, it seemed like it was focused on me.
Yeah, you're the medium. They're attractive to you.
But you would think with a woman and a child that no matter what, they're going to look past him and, try to be intrigued in that. And yeah, that's crazy, man. When I was watching that video that you took off right at the Torreya Challenge, I've had 2 encounters right in that area that we heard something walking through a creek, and I was terrified, so scared that time. And I have a video of me talking after, and my whole vibe is different. And then a second time we were past the Torreya Challenge on the loop, and where there's a den where I believe, because there's a fallen bridge and it gets really thick, and we hesitated for a couple minutes, and we heard this huge boulder be thrown right behind us. But yeah, man, right when I was watching your video, I recognized that first bridge on the Torreya Challenge. It gets weird, and imagine it goes for 5.5 miles around.
Yeah, it wasn't long after we passed that bridge is when it started feeling weird. You could tell something was off, and it was a couple of times before we got to that point where it really got bad. I stopped. I did not hear nothing, but I reacted as though I would if Kim were to say, "Hey, Donnie, come here a minute." It's when your spouse, your loved one, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever it may be, you got somebody there that calls you that you're with every day. You don't really think and react. You just react. You go straight to, if they're calling you go right to them. And it was like that. It was so strange. I didn't hear anything at all. But I stopped and I went to turn and go up the hill when you're right before you get to that bridge at Torreya, that real old bridge, 50 feet before we got to the bridge. We could see it. Once we realized we were almost there, we're like, yeah, there it is. And we start going down. I was behind Kim and Rosie, and I just stopped and I looked up and I started to go up the hill on that left. And I only took 1 or 2 steps and I realized, what am I doing? But that happened a couple of times out there, and I have never had that happen. I don't know if it's something wrong with me that caused me to act that way. I don't know. It hasn't happened since. And that was the only time I've ever experienced it.
I talked to Stacy Brown just recently at the Florida Bigfoot conference, and he told me there's some huge caves over there, and I think that's where they're hiding out. And I hang out at Ocheesy Landing right across the river from Torreya, and it's about 8 minutes from my house, and I take the kayak across Apalachicola River to the backside of Torreya, and I'm terrified when I'm over there because I can see my mom across the river, but guess what? She can't save me from anything that's out there. And I think there's dogmen, pixies, and of course the Sasquatch. And there's been the thermal imaging. I've talked to the rangers. They said Campsite 4 is a hot spot. And we're supposed to spend the night one night out there, but we got to get all the permits correct. But definitely got to have you join if we do.
We'll come in by the water.
There was a question real quick.
I should.
This guy's from Australia. Hero, do you guys think of the Bigfoot as like benefit or benevolent? Because out here in Australia, the Yowie or the wise man or the hairy man are considered protectors. They kidnap kids, but they return them in the same day. Wow, in a day. That's weird. Having taught them how to forage or hunt.
Wow. I really don't know how to answer that, honestly.
Me either.
Because I've had people reach out to me that have had some really good experiences with them, and I mean direct contact. And I've had others that have had encounters far worse than what I went through, to where they actually, had them throwing things, hitting them. I mean, violent encounters. But it seems the ones that I've heard personally, there's been more negative ones than there have been positive. So I don't know. I think it's like the human race. You know, we at one time we were all good, and now you know there's 40% of humans are good people and good natured, and it's the world's getting horrible. And what if it's impacting them as well? I don't know.
No,
I wish I had.
Everybody wants more.
I agree.
They want to take everything.
And I think the human beings have turned their back on their ancestors and on nature as a whole. Plus, we're going to war with these creatures too. So some of them can see through that and see our soul, but some of them are stuck at they're on the opposite side of the fence than us. So I think you just got to feel it out, because I've heard of the orangutan lady who saved a little child who had a compound fracture in Ocala. So that was a keeper, you know. But then there's the ones that have kidnapped Dennis Martin and Jared Adadero and went after Cullen Finnerty and killed Henry McCabe. Those ones had something to it. But I think just as in this world, there's good ones and bad ones, just like Donnie said. So, yes, they are the beneficiary, but then they're also benevolent to this world too. So you just got to keep your balance.
Well, guys, I got to leave to pick up my wife from work, but I got to say, Donnie, your stories are amazing just because how you said the details. I vision your stories in my head. And when we do another Bigfoot show, an actual Bigfoot show, not about movies, you know, we got to have you on. We got to dive deeper into this paranormal stuff with you.
Oh, absolutely! I'd love to join you. Just let me know. Right now we're going through a lot of stuff. So I haven't had as much time as I normally would. My father-in-law passed away 2 weeks ago, and my brother-in-law he passed away 3 days ago. So my wife lost her daddy and her brother in 2 weeks' time, and we lost our dog we've had 16 years. We lost her 3 hours before my father-in-law's funeral. And it's been a train wreck, but it's supposed to come in threes, so it should be over, I hope. But we'll get back on track. And yeah, absolutely. If you end up getting something like that lined up, I'd love to join you. It's been a pleasure being here. And if it weren't for my brother Connor, I wouldn't even have known. So thank you greatly. I'm subscribed though. I subscribed today to you, so maybe I'll get the notifications next time.
I know that Eric's brother, Bob, he's a doctor. He worked at the Smithsonian. He looks like a caveman himself, a friendly caveman. But he will love you, man. And just like, man, we have been on a 48-hour trip recently. We had Long Island Bigfoot, who has had close encounters and has had them touch him and, you know, seen them face to face. And then you, Donnie Miller, and then we had Tippa TV, and then we always got my craziness. And Gypsy Road Eric is the one that facilitates all of this. He's the point guard, man. So yes, very thankful to Eric, and thankful for you, Donnie, to come and surprise us, man. Thank you so much. And this is a mega episode.
We were just talking about Bigfoot movies, and now we got the most incredible stories. And so what I'm probably going to do too is I'm probably going to break up this video, put one out of just your stories, so people don't miss your stories because we're thinking that we just talked about movies.
Oh, absolutely. I got when you get set up, if you guys decide to invite me back on sometime, I've got a few other ones I could share with you too. I've had a lot of experiences, but a lot of it is it wasn't nothing really extreme about it. I seen one wherever I was at, and I get scared every time I see them.
But the thing is, there might be something there that you might not think is big that somebody else might remember something happened to them. So, you know, believe it or not, even the small stories mean something big to certain people.
Oh yeah, they had one of the I don't know the video. And one of them I recorded. I think it was a couple of years ago. I film all the time, and I was in this area where I do a lot of film, and I get a lot of activity, and I don't go there for the activity. I try to find the evidence to show people what to look for when they're out in the forest with their children or by themselves. And, kind of one of them things where, hey, if you guys see this, pay attention or don't go in the area. That's kind of what I do a lot of. And I was in that area looking for the bent trees where they'll twist branches around trees and kind of form a weird cover around some of the smaller stuff. They take limbs and they kind of weave them around smaller trees. It makes like a basket around them. I was looking for stuff like that, and I heard a limb being thrown at me, but I could hear it coming through the trees, hitting limbs as it was getting closer. And I spun around with the camera just in time to catch it as it hit the ground right there, pretty close to me. And I left when that happened, but I caught that one on video. I don't remember which one it's in, and I got a picture of one I caught. Somebody found it.
What we'll do is when we have, we'll pick a good day that works for you. We'll take that video you're talking about and we'll play it on the channel and we'll dissect it. And
all right,
we got to get you on with Through the Paranormal because she's actually a true medium right here.
Oh,
she
wow!
could probably do a good reading on you.
That'd be awesome. Heck yeah! And also, if you got an email, Eric, if you could email me your email. I got a picture. It's a screenshot taken out of one of my videos. I filmed the video a few years back, and 6 months ago, I think it was, my brother reached out to me and he said, hey, this guy, I think his name was Steve. He was watching your video. When I was filming this particular day, when I was out there, I got this overwhelming feeling of being watched. I knew there was something there, but I didn't see anything. So I got my camera up and I zoomed in where I was feeling that sensation, and I kept the camera there because I knew where the feeling was coming from. When I get the feelings, normally my mind perceives it as it's coming at me like a flashlight beam, and I'm at the white end of it. And that feeling, I know I can pinpoint within about 10 foot of where it's coming from, and that's usually how I end up spotting them if there is a creature there. I'll get the feeling and I'll focus on where I'm feeling it at, and I'll eventually find him. Usually this day I didn't see nothing. And so I zoomed in on the area and I didn't see anything. Well, I got home, I uploaded the video, and then 3 years later, which was about 6 months ago, Jeff says, hey, my friend Steve found this in the video when you said that something was there, but you couldn't see it. He found it. And it is an amazing screenshot, but I lost the original, the actual screenshot. I zoomed in and I took a screenshot of the zoom in where I could see it. And when my phone died, I don't have the original, but I have the blown up version. It's a little pixelated, but there's no mistake what you're looking at. Well, there's a creature laying there, right there in front of me.
I got my email address right here, but in my description on the bottom, my email address is actually in the description of every video.
I'll send it to you too, Donnie, just so you have it.
Mine is standinggoatsrescue@yahoo.com.
Yeah. So beyond that, I do gotta go. I gotta run out of here, pick up the wife, and this was an awesome show this week. I'm having a great time, but I do gotta go.
Thank you.
But man,
thank you for having me, Eric. I had a blast.
See you guys.